going to be going over individual stuff as well. Just know that the workbooks, we're going to be making them a little bit different. So with the workbook, it's going to be an overview, and then I'm going to have Excel based on different services that you could plug and play with, because everything is so different based off if you're estimating and pricing for mowing versus fertilizing versus landscape projects. It all does a different process. So today we're going to be talking about pricing, proper pricing, and how to make sure that you're making money in your business. So to truly become successful business owner, you must understand your numbers no matter what. And I've seen many businesses suffer from this, actually close their doors, or they lose money and eventually go out of business, which is inevitably going to happen if you don't know the numbers, unfortunately. So perfecting your pricing is going to help minimize loss, identify the money makers, and also allow you to focus on what is profitable and where the profit is in your organization. There's no right or wrong way to price out your services. I mean, when you start out in business, you're going to learn so much as you continue on, and just understand that as you learn and grow, you're going to adapt and change in the pricing process, depending on the operation of your business. As overhead increases, your pricing is going to increase. So just understand that over time, if you're just starting out, it's not a bad thing to be where you're at. You're going to learn, you're going to change over time. So the main four things with pricing that I want to go over first, and I just put it in a pricing circle. So these are the four main things that everything in your price should incorporate. Number one, labor. So this is one of the biggest things you need to factor in. Like I said, with the workbook, you're going to see how to do this as well. But how much time it takes to complete the service, if requiring multiple team members, what's the multiplier? Factor in the travel times, lunch breaks, if you pay for lunch, the loading, unloading in the morning, all that should be included in the labor portion of your estimate for the pricing. The second is materials. So depending on the service, like I said, if you're just doing mowing or fertilizing, landscaping, it's all going to change a little bit. But for landscaping and fertilizing, you need to have those material costs, the cost of goods sold, the fuel, and any supplies, tangible supplies. I mean, trimmer string, the stuff that you go through a lot of, still needs to be bulked into that material cost as well. Overhead is the third thing. So what it takes to run your business day in, day out, month by month. So rent, utilities, insurance, repairs, maintenance, office staff wages, professional fees, equipment costs. It goes on and on and on. And I'll go over more of that as well later. But those are what it takes to run the business day to day. So you have to know what all of these numbers are first before you can even properly figure out what your pricing should be to the customer. Without knowing those, you're going to be losing money, or you're not going to be allocating enough money towards those items. And the fourth, which is what not very many people talk about, is having that profit figured out too. So if you want to make sure that you have, 5, 10, 20% profit on each job, factor that in. You need to take that out before you cover the overhead costs, before you cover materials, before you have the labor factored in there as well. Because if you're just covering all those things and you're not even paying, or you're not increasing your bank account, then you're still stagnant, you're going backwards. So you have to factor in the profit in every pricing and service that you're doing, no matter what. So these are the cost factored into your pricing. No matter what stage you're at, you need to know these. Without it, you can't be profitable and grow your business. So I've got 3 ways that pricing can happen in your business. So the first one is pricing by size. So pricing by size, and I recommend this for lawn mowing, fertilizing, aeration, snow removal, any service that's based on materials in this different size of turf or concrete, whatever it is. So that's a variable based off the size of the property. The second is pricing by the service call. So let's say you're doing a sprinkler service call, or you're doing a one-time job that it might not take an hour, but you still need to have that pricing set. That could be landscape maintenance labor rates. It could be, salting occurrences. It could be anything that's just kind of a one-off where it doesn't really matter if it's a larger property or not. So that's we'll go over that a little bit more as well. And then pricing by the project is the third. So that avenue applies to more landscape jobs or sprinkler installations, where you're going to factor in all of the requirements, all the materials, all the deliveries, etc., into that pricing, and then have a multiplier on that as well. So all of the above first based off labor. So we talked about that. It's a big portion of the pricing circle. So start by just timing yourself. If you're just starting out, timing yourself or your crews, even if you've been in business for several years or just starting out, you need to know how long it takes specifically for each property. And if you're doing it by yourself, don't discount yourself at all or your abilities. You have to be charged and paid enough to compensate your work, your skills, your talent. So don't ever devaluate your personal rate of pay. So let's say, for example, you have a 2-man crew that can do a $50 yard in 30 minutes. Their pay could be $18 an hour, and they could knock that out, like I said, in 30 minutes. So your labor costs are 18. Your leftover on a $50 yard would be $32. So you're going to have that $32 to cover overhead, materials, and profit, right? But you have to factor the labor first. How long does it take? But without the timing of it, you don't even know what your leftover amount is to cover these areas. So you have to get the times down. How quick can they perform a job? If it's fertilizing, how quick can they fertilize a property that's 4,000 square feet? So timing every single thing that you're doing or your crews are doing. If you GPS the trucks, that helps a lot more as well. But starting with the labor is the most important thing on all 3 of those estimating practices. Another thing I said a little bit before too, but when you're calculating the time, make sure you factor in the loading, unloading times at the beginning and the end of each day, the travel times to and from each location, the lunch breaks, because that's all accounted for in your pricing. You can't start paying those people when they get to the job. You have to factor in everything that goes into their salaries, their wages, or your wages to get the job started, to get it done, to finish out the day. So factor all that in there as well. And the key to achieving a higher profit margin on all of that stuff, of course, is optimal routing. And I know I've talked to you guys a couple times about that, but creating a tightly routed, optimized route, so you are not driving all over town, you're reducing the amount of travel time from one stop to the next. That's what's going to create the best profits and maximize efficiency. Second, you want to make sure that you're utilizing a measurement software that can give you precise turf square footage, concrete square footage. There's plenty of them out there, and those that have used me for coaching consulting, I share that free option as well, that you don't even have to go out to the job site to measure everything up, and you can take that number in as well. So once you have the labor times and the square footage times, then you can create a pricing chart. So the pricing chart, I'm going to send over a better one, a bigger one in the workbook. So if you're just doing mowing, fertilizing, etc., it's going to look something like this. So you're going to have the total square foot. So let's just say for us, it's anything under 4,000 square feet is our base price. Then you have 5, 6, 7, all the way. Ours goes to 450,000 square feet or 1,000 square feet or 100,000 square feet. So once you find this all out, or once you figure out your times, you can figure out the cost of materials. So what's your fuel for that size of house? If you're doing fertilizing, what's the fertilizing cost? So everything that would go into what you're doing on that property, if it's just mowing, just figure out the fuel, the trimmer string, whatever that is, whatever the product costs are, and then the labor costs. So if it takes you half an hour to do that and your labor rate is $60 an hour, so maybe that's $30 in labor just for that house or that size based off the $60 per man hour, whatever you're using. But this is going to get you the total cost to just take care of that without overhead, without anything else that you need to run the business. So you'll figure out what that's total is going to cost you first based off the size of the property, right? So for fertilizing, it's easier as it goes. I mean, a bag of fertilizer typically covers 10 to 12,000 square feet. So you know your costs are maybe $2 and some change to $3 per 1,000 square feet. So you take that times 5, and that's going to get you your fertilizing cost for 5,000 square foot. So you already know the cost of it. How long does it take to do it? And then what's your total cost just for fertilizing of 5,000 or 4,000? So you're going to take all these costs, and that's how you can build out your pricing chart. And we'll get to the pricing chart next, but I want to make sure that you guys understand how to figure this out first. So everything you need for that size of yard, track it, track the times. If it's different than a different 4,000 square foot yard, it might be 15 minutes and one might be 30 minutes. So what I do too is factor in a multiplier. So let's say this is going to be a lot more difficult house than the one down the street. There's fence, there's 10 trees, there's all this obstacles. So maybe you're going to have a multiplier in there that this might take 1.5 times more than the other house. So just know that there's a range that you can factor in. If it's difficult, if it's easy, no fences, no trees, you can go through it really quick. That's going to make a big difference. So that's going to get you your cost. After that, what we do is create a master pricing cheat sheet. So you still have your square footage. You're going to do your under 4,000 or whatever your area is, 5, 6, 7, and that's going to go all the way down. And let's just say this is your fertilizing. This is your mowing. This is your aeration. So you'll factor in what your costs are from each of those, and then you're going to build out what your charges should be. So you already know your costs maybe for fertilizing are $20, okay? And once you figured out your overhead cost, and I can help you play with that as well with the estimator that we're going to send out, but then you know that minimum you might be $40 for fert for there. And you know that every 1,000 square feet afterwards, you need to add in $2 or $4. So maybe it's going to go up to 44, 46, 48, so on. But that way you can just look at this chart as you build it out, no matter what you're doing, mowing, fert, aerating, overseeding, you know exactly what your costs are on the other sheet. You know what your income or what your proposal should be on this sheet. And once you kind of see it with the estimator, it's going to make a lot more sense. This is kind of a quick version, but once you guys get that, it's going to be a lot more visual to help out. But with this sheet, and this is what everybody in our office has too, it's laid out the exact same way. So if anybody calls, we know exactly what to charge them. We know if they're 25,000 square feet, it's the same price for everybody. And it just makes it easier. You don't have to waste time. You don't have to go out and measure. You can just get them a price over the phone and sign up a new customer. So that's the first way, by pricing by the size. The next is pricing by a service call or a one time. So setting a price by a service call or similar services takes into account the same ideology as above. So what you're paying your employees or yourself should be the starting point. Good rule of thumb is whenever you're paying your employee or yourself, multiply it by at least 3 to 4 times. So that should be like your service call or per man hour rate. So if you're paying somebody $20 an hour, you should shoot for a per man per hour rate of at least $60 to $80 per hour. So that's just what I've seen in the industry over time, is typically it's 3 to 4 times that labor rate is what you should be charging the customer. So once you figure that out, then at least, you know, for a irrigation service call or a one-time landscape cleanup, you know, your guys are being paid $15 to $20 an hour, multiplied by 3 to 4. That's what your per man per hour rate should be for landscaping or for anything that you're doing kind of by the hour. So you can take that too and factor it into all of these, right? So once you know that you should be charging $60 per man hour for mowing, and how many stops in a day or how many stops in an hour they could be doing, you can work backwards from that, right? So for $60 an hour, if you're paying somebody $20 an hour and they can do 15 yards a day, well, you would just divide that back out, figure out what those houses should be at, so you are making the most per man per hour that you should be charging. The last way to price out is by the project. So this is where it gets a little bit difficult. This is where you need to create your own estimator. I'm also going to send you one that will help with that as well. But this is for more of landscape services, new landscaping, sprinkler service, installation. So it's calculating all your materials, your fuel, your dumping, your delivery, etc., creating a personalized spreadsheet based on your company. And what they will do is you'll see what your prices are. So you always need to lay that out. What's your wholesale cost? What's your contractor price? And then what's your retail price is what you're going to send to the customer. So the same kind of method goes into place with this as well. So everything that you're buying and reselling to the customer, you should be charging at least double that cost. You should be getting those costs from the vendors at a very lower rate from what a retail person would go in and buy that for. So just an example for mulch. I mean, I think we get it and some people get it for $24, $25 a yard, but you should be charging at least double that for the material itself. Because if a homeowner goes to Lowe's and they buy bags, they're going to be spending way more than that on the amount of bags it would take to cover a yard of bulk. So you have to factor in that when those people are getting that stuff delivered to them, they're paying for the convenience. You're taking into account the delivery, the pickup, all that stuff is factored into that pricing as well. And you have to explain that to the customer. We're bringing all this stuff to you. Yeah, you might be able to go get it cheaper from Home Depot or Menards or wherever they go, but this is the convenience. We're bringing all this stuff to you. You don't have to worry about it. We're taking care of everything. So it'll change over time. Like I said, your prices will start to fluctuate a little bit based on the time, based on your price of bulk materials from your vendors. But that is something that you have to focus on too. You have to be charging at least that amount to the end customer, at least double. For sprinkler parts, it's even more. I think our sprinkler parts are anywhere between 1,000 and 3,000% increase. So it just depends on what that looks like, because people can't go and buy those sprinkler parts without knowing how to use them. And when they go to Lowe's, it's even marked up more than the retail at our wholesaler. And when you buy in bulk, you save more, you make more of a profit. So identifying those costs, you can implement those into that estimator. You can see exactly how many plants you're putting in, how many yards of mulch you're putting in, and correlate to a labor rate from there as well. So if you're going to be putting in a yard of mulch and you know a yard of mulch takes you 15 minutes, that estimator should spill that out as well. 10 yards of mulch, 15 minutes times 10, that should be your total time allocated for just laying that mulch. So it's going to make a lot more sense when you see this estimator. I promise you, if you have questions on that, let me know. But this is something that you have to analyze constantly. It used to be once a year. In current times, with the prices the way they are, we're doing it almost every quarter, but you have to estimate properly with what you're getting in. I mean, everybody is paying more for vehicles or paying more for houses. So we have to make sure we're on that same inflation to cover our expenses, to cover your increase in insurance and taxes and rent and just cost of goods to run your business. So the data is either going to show you where your profit margins are high or low, and we're going to go over that in a different segment as well. But from taking that information on a quarter or monthly basis, you can factor in what's making you the most money, what you need to drop, what you need to increase, but you have to know where to start. You have to know where the numbers are and be certain that you're making money on every job you do. So another way to even find out more about your market is just researching the biggest competitors in your area. I mean, it's not something you want to go and price the cheapest people out there. You want to price who's the biggest competitors, what are their pricing programs, and the key is just finding out what your price baseline is compared to everybody else that your current customers or potential customers are already paying. So you're going to see if you're pricing yourself too high, too low. You can't always be basing it off of the biggest competitor because their overhead's way more, but you don't want to leave a bunch of money on the table where you could have had a slightly less charge with way less overhead and make way more money. So the worst thing you can do as a business owner is undervalue or not charge enough for your products and services, hands down. You don't want to leave money on the table ever, and it's not a good thing that you know that somebody would be charging more and you could be making more. So there's several ways to find out that information too. A lot of people put it on their website. They'll put it in their social media, their mailers. You might get them on your doorstep. So look at those, save them, put them in an Excel, put every single competitor in the Excel and what their pricing is. You can do something just like this too. You could put my company for fertilizing. You can put True Green for fertilizing. You can put everybody for fertilizing, see where everybody is across the board, and then see if your services are in line with theirs. Without finding their stuff online, what you could do, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, I think, because I think everybody needs to find this information out, is just to ask a family member or a friend to reach out to one of those those competitors and ask for a quote. I mean, most of them will get back to them instantly and say, our prices start at this, or they'll email something over where they didn't have to go out to take a look at the yard. So finding those out too, not only do you get what their prices are, but you also get insight to how your competitors are providing their estimates, what their process is, how they try to sign your friend or your family member up. And you can learn about what works, what doesn't work, how you can improve to beat out those competitors and capitalize on that. So for us, it's the same thing. We would do that when we started out early on. We would test out the competitors' estimating procedures. Like, gosh, this is so unprofessional. How do we make this better? How do we make it more enjoyable for the customer to sign up with us? And by just finding out what the competitors did and didn't do, that allowed us to capitalize on speed of estimating. So we knew we needed to get an estimate out that day, not the next week. We knew where our prices should be. We knew that 99% of them don't follow up with an estimate. So we never even heard back after the initial estimate to see if there's any questions. So we had to work on all that stuff in our company. So it gives you an insight of what's being done, what you can improve on with everybody's process, and what can improve your business. So at least once a year, like I talked about, you need to have the price evaluation. You need to go back on your pricing. You need to go back on your cost and see where you should be increasing your pricing. Whether it's 5% or $5, you have to start increasing every single year to cover the inflation and rising cost of doing business. Every single year you should be increasing. Your overhead's increasing, your equipment's increasing, your prices should also increase. Every business is different and every market is different. So your prices are going to change, but it takes some time to understand and learn that, which is okay. We've all gone through it, and it always changes year to year as your business matures. So if you'd like help with that too, I can help as soon as you get those workbooks and with those estimators, because every business is different. Some of you might have much more overhead, a building that you have to pay off. You might have an office staff. Others might be just starting out, so your overhead's less, but you still don't want to price yourself out of the market. So let me help you with that as well. You can send me any of those questions, be happy to help. And that is one thing that every year you should be doing. The last thing I want to tell you about too is the break-even analysis. So this is something that everybody should be doing on a monthly basis to figure out, especially if you're starting out. So with the break-even, you're to figure out what your fixed costs are. So all of your fixed expenses, and then divided by the revenue per unit or revenue per job. So let's say your fixed cost every single month are $10,000. And that might include all the materials and everything needed to go into that. If you want to make it simple, let's just say it's $10,000, which is fuel, it's your insurance, your cell phone bill, your taxes, all that stuff. That's taken out away from the revenue. So let's say your revenue per mowing that we kind of talked about earlier is the $32 left over to cover all that stuff. So how many $50 mows do you have to cover or do to cover that fixed cost to break even? That's before you even make money, right? So that's quite a bit. So if you think about it that way, if you want to cover, if you have a lot of expenses, you need to either raise your prices, figure out a way to lower your expenses, or start another revenue stream. Because if you're going to just go off that $50 a yard that brings in 32 after you pay your employees, you're going to have at least 312 customers at $50 a mow per month just to cover that $10,000 of expenses. Before that, or anything after that, would just be profit. So anything after that is money that you can put in the bank account, but that's what's going to cover all your expenses every single month. So no matter what your expenses are, you need to look at that as well. Because if this number is way more than what you are currently producing, you need to start changing some stuff. You need to go back and reevaluate what the expenses are. Why are we not covering this? Or how many do we need to cover? Could we shorten this up by raising everybody's prices to $60 and we're making an extra $10 in revenue to cover those costs? So those are all things to analyze. And in the estimator, that's going to go over that too as well. So once you put in all your information in the estimator I'm going to send over, it's going to spit this number out for you. You'll be able to see what your monthly break even should be, or how many jobs you need to sell, or how many lawns or mowing, fertilizing, whatever you need to do to cover those expenses to break even. Then you know from there on, that's where the growth is. That's where the revenue's at. That's where you can pay the profit account, as I like to say it, or pay yourself more, give yourself dividends based on that overage from the fixed costs. So it's a lot of information. It's hard to explain it on here without showing you guys, and let's go in through the estimator, the process of figuring that out. So I look forward to seeing yours and helping you understand that. If you need help with it, let me know. I'm happy to help. And that is something that I think is very important before we even go into the season, is we need to know what those prices are, especially this year, especially with all the price in fertilizing and fuel and everything else going up. So we have to get all those numbers of costs first before we can give customers their pricing for the 2022 season. Otherwise, we're going to be stagnant. We're going backwards. We're losing money. We can't have that. We've got to have the best year ever. So.